Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Daily Gwei Refuel, where I recap the latest news in the Ethereum ecosystem. I'm your host, Anthony Sassano, and today's the 28th of May, 2021. All right, everyone. Before we get into it today, I wanted to quickly make an announcement here that I'll be doing another AMA in the Daily Grey Discord channel tomorrow, so Saturday, the 29th of May here. The times are listed here, so it'll be 11 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time for me, 3 p.m. Central Eastern Standard Time. I think that's what CEST stands for. I think that's European time, Central European Standard Time probably. 9 a.m. Eastern Time in the US and 6 a.m. Pacific Time in the US here. Now, it will be recorded, so if you can't make those times, don't worry. And if you want to ask your questions for them to be answered on the AMA, you can do so in the AMA series channel on the Discord. So yeah, definitely go there and ask your question if you won't be able to make it, and I'll make sure to answer it, and then you can just go find the answer in the recap video. So yeah, definitely if you have the time and you're free, feel free to join. It was really fun doing the last one, and I think this one's going to be even better. There seems to be like a lot of questions already in the AMA series channel that I'm looking forward to answering. So yeah, be sure to join the Discord and get involved with that. So just a quick shout out here. For those who don't know, I also do a podcast with Eric Connor as part of ETHUB. So we co-founded ETHUB back in 2019, and we've been doing a podcast ever since, I think, late 2018, where we do like weekly recaps of the Ethereum ecosystem. And then, Eric's really knowledgeable of the whole ecosystem, and, he's pretty much just as knowledgeable as I am. And, we have a lot of fun doing it. And, over the last, I guess, 3 months, as Eric notes here, the listeners of our podcast have actually tripled. So if you're not a listener yet, I highly recommend giving it a listen. There's actually a lot of older podcasts on there with guests that you should go back and listen to as well. They were really fun to do, but essentially, yeah, as I said, we do like a weekly recap every week. There's also an ETHUB newsletter that I do as well on top of the Daily Gwei newsletter each week to keep up with everything happening in Ethereum too. But yeah, it's been cool to see the growth here. Obviously, I think that's because there's just more and more people are coming into the ecosystem, more and more new people, and they're hungry for Ethereum knowledge at the end of the day. Like I've seen that happen with the Daily Gwei kind of subscribers on both my newsletter and YouTube. So really awesome to see that. But yeah, definitely go check this out. It'll be linked in the YouTube description below. So another company has filed for an ETH ETF in the US, the company called Wisdom Tree. So this comes after VanEck filed one just about a month ago here. And this, obviously isn't unexpected. I would expect all the companies that have put forward applications for an Bitcoin ETF to do the same for ETH. Now, I've said before on the refill that I was expecting a Bitcoin ETF maybe towards the end of this year, but I don't know if that's going to happen now because of what we just saw play out in the markets over the last couple weeks. Because one of the things that the SEC, the Securities Exchange Commission in the US, looks at when they're approving these ETFs is what's the market structure like? Is it manipulated, right? Is it extremely volatile? How reliant is the market on leverage and all that sort of stuff? Now, when you think about what happened in crypto over the last 2 weeks and how a lot of it was driven by leverage, you can see why the SEC is probably like, well, this ETF is not actually good for investors, and we want to protect investors because of the fact that there's so much volatility here due to unregulated offshore leverage-based exchanges. And I don't blame them for that, but I think they would be a little bit hypocritical to be doing that, because they allow other inferior products to exist. And I've spoken about this before. The products from Grayscale, GBTC, and Ethy are actually inferior to an ETF for a number of reasons, but the biggest reason is that it can trade at a premium or a discount to its NAV, or net asset value. And you've seen that lately with the GBTC premium going negative. I think it went to like negative 15 or 20% at one point to the current spot price of Bitcoin. So if Bitcoin was trading at like 40K, it would be like 10% under that, which obviously is not good for any investors. I mean, if you buy that dip there and then it goes back up to NAV, I mean, that's good. But the fact that the reason why it can't track the net asset value is because of the fact that there's no redeem function. So there's no way to arbor that spread. So it's literally a separate market on its own, and it relies on supply and demand dynamics there. And we saw during the bull market, or at least during the more bullish times, that it was trading at a large premium too, which was even worse because it would get sold down, and then people buying higher would have just lost money on that. So And, people might ask, why are these products important, like ETFs and these other kind of like structured products? And the reason why people love them and they're really important is because they can trade them using their retirement accounts where they basically pay 0% tax, right? So in the US, that's a 401k. And I'm not an expert on 401k, so I won't try and kind of go into it here. But that's why ETFs are so popular, is that they're these structured products you can get access to and you can basically get exposure to an asset in your retirement account or in an account that's like a tax offset account as well. So, but yeah, it's going to be cool to see. I mean, not cool, maybe interesting to see how the ETF process goes now that I just don't think that we're going to get a Bitcoin ETF at the end of this year. And I don't even think the Bitcoiners who are most bullish on this happening think that it's going to happen anymore. It's maybe next year or something like that. And I still hold that an ETH ETF won't get approved until a Bitcoin ETF does, but it will get approved shortly after. So from that kind of perspective, I mean, I guess it's okay. I don't think the crypto market needs to rely on an ETF to go up. I think, obviously it doesn't. It's been going up, its whole life without ETFs in the US, but there's also other countries and other jurisdictions that are embracing these kind of products. I mean, you've seen in Canada, there's like 4 or 5 ETH ETFs there. There's ETPs, exchange traded products in Europe, especially in, I think, Germany from memory. So these products do exist in other kind of places, but obviously the US is a huge market and one of the biggest markets, if not the biggest, outside of Asia for crypto. I think it's actually bigger than Asia in terms of like raw trading volumes. So when you kind of like look at that and kind of put that into context, you can see why an ETF would be really bullish. But again, I don't think an ETF is required, but still cool to see more and more companies submitting applications for an ETH ETF, because it just kind of puts that on the SEC's radar. And then once the BTC ETF gets approved, the ETH one will follow shortly after. So Mariano Conti put out this really great tweet today that I actually wrote a newsletter about. So if you want to read that, you can. But essentially what his tweet says is he's quoting someone saying, "Is it too late for me to learn Solidity?" And then he goes on to say, "I was 35 and coding PHP when I picked up Solidity 0.3 for the first time. So no, it's not too late." Now, what I wrote about in the newsletter was a bit different to this, where I kind of like focused on the "is it too late" question, because I get this question a lot from people. Is it too late to learn about crypto? Is it too late to invest in crypto? Have I missed the boat? I'm sure we've all gotten these questions before. So I guess like what I wanted to talk about was the fact that I truly and strongly believe that we are still very, very early. And, this is for a number of reasons. If you look at just where the crypto kind of like ecosystem is today, I think there's two things you can look at. You can look at the crypto markets, which obviously are very frothy, and there's a lot of people playing in those. And then you can look at the actual adoption of the applications. So if we look at the crypto markets, there's $1.5 trillion, $1.6 trillion total crypto market cap right now. Most of that being Bitcoin and ETH, right? So when you kind of like look at that and see and compare it to other asset classes and other assets, you might think, okay, well, it's become kind of like it's not like a small asset class anymore. It's quite large, and you'll be right to say that. But at the same time, and I spoke about how like market caps of things can be very easily inflated, and it's more about liquidity and things like that. But let's just take the market cap on its face value. And like the exchange volumes and things like that, they're all really large, right? And that's all well and good. And I think most people that are in crypto are just trading cryptos on centralized exchanges. They're not actually using the apps, which takes me to my second point, where if you actually look at something like DeFi on Ethereum and who's actually used DeFi, there's 2.5 million addresses that have interacted with the DeFi app. Now, addresses don't equal people, because many people have different addresses. I mean, I personally have like 15 different addresses that I've used to interact with DeFi apps. Now, I don't use those regularly, of course. Like, there's only a handful that I use regularly, but off the top of my head, it's at least 15. It's probably much more than that. I'm probably not counting all the multi-sigs that I'm on, all the kind of like one-offs that I did to preserve privacy and all this sort of stuff. So if you kind of like think about that, and apply, you could even just apply and say that people have like 2 addresses. So if you do that, you immediately halve that 2.5 million down to 1.25 million. And let's just round that off at 1 million, because there's many people like me who have way more than 2 addresses. So you could say that at absolute best, there's 1 million unique people that have interacted with Ethereum DeFi. I think it's less than that, but let's just say it's that for now. 1 million people out of the entire world's population is 0.013% of the total world's population. Now, this obviously includes, kids and stuff like that. It's not just the adult population, which is, who's going to be using DeFi the majority of the time. But even if we just like halve that, it's still like a very small kind of portion of the population. And this is what kind of I mean when I say we're still very, very early in this ecosystem, because it doesn't matter what the markets are doing. The markets are always going to get ahead of things. It matters about the adoption and the adoption of these different apps. Are these apps actually integrated with the wider kind of like wider world, right? In the wider kind of like systems, like we have like a pretty circular kind of crypto and DeFi economy, but is it actually helping people? Is it actually touching people outside of that ecosystem? And I don't think it is right now. You can kind of like, I guess the clearest example would be to look at is the payments infrastructure of the world running on Ethereum? No, it's not, right? The only payment infrastructure that's running on Ethereum really is just stablecoins doing their thing, whatever that may be. But like if we're talking about e-commerce and replacing things like Visa and PayPal, Ethereum is nowhere near that. And Ethereum itself will not do this. There'll be products built on top of it, especially on layer 2s and things like that, that will kind of scale to replace these sorts of things. Or PayPal and Visa might make their own and run them on the Ethereum rails. But right now, the majority of the payments ecosystem is running on legacy systems, and traditional finance, banking is all running there. It's not running on Ethereum. Right now, what Ethereum and DeFi are like parallel systems. But these parallel systems, while the volumes may seem large, they're not touching many people, as I just explained. So there's that aspect to it. And then there's many other aspects. I know that we saw explosion in the NFT space recently, but that's still very, very small. Like think about how many major, games are actually NFTs, or major kind of like music albums are NFTs, or anything that people are creating or are making into NFTs. It's still very, very small. So when I kind of get this question, I basically say to people that you're still very early, not just from I guess like an adoption perspective, but also from an investment perspective. I truly believe that people really underestimate how exponential these things can get. And I often get pushback when I say to people that I believe ETH can go to 100K, in less than 10 years. And they say, you're crazy. It's only 2.5K right now. Like, how's it going to get to 100K in such a short amount of time? And maybe even less than 5 years. I don't know. Like, I'm not making any promises here. I don't like to put timelines on things, but generally it's because exponential growth is just not something humans are very good at measuring. Because when you think about it, when we think about growth, we think, one person after the other. We don't think that, one person can actually talk to, a group of people, and then that group of people can go talk to more groups of people, and that's how the exponential growth works. Because you can imagine me telling people about Ethereum. Say I tell 5 people about Ethereum, and I kind of like ETH pill them on it. I get them really bullish on it, and they're really excited to get involved. Well, those 5 people are going to go tell all their other friends about it and all the other groups about it, and then all those people are going to tell everyone else, and then you can see how this works. And to use maybe a really easy to relate to example, it's exactly how like something like a virus spreads, right? To choose an example that everyone's familiar with. Like, look at how fast something like COVID spread. It's the same thing with information. It can spread so quickly and so exponentially because it's one to many instead of one to one. So I think that's just a tangible example to use here, and that's exactly why I think that when we have true exponential growth, it'll be hard to ignore. And there's a saying that signs of froth are indistinguishable from signs of adoption, and I truly believe that. I think we're still in the mass adoption phase. We're still in the early stages of it, but it's going to happen, and it's going to happen faster than people think. And even then, I think we're still early, because if you look at even like other tech revolutions like the internet, most of maybe not most, but a lot of the top companies today, internet-based companies today, came much later. I mean, look at one of the most popular apps in the world, or the most popular app in the world, TikTok. That was founded in 2016. Snapchat, another very popular app, founded in the 2010s, I believe. Instagram, same thing. Facebook and Twitter, 2004, 2006. And there's so many examples here of these sorts of things. Yes, there are companies like Amazon and Microsoft and Google that were around in the early 2000s, but how I view them is how I view like the Makers and the Aave and the Compounds of the world, and the Unisops, I guess, as well, that there were these just breakout apps that came along really early and survived, but most of the kind of like big apps and big kind of like services came later. For various reasons, but I guess like I'll leave it at that for now. I think when just generally whenever someone asks you, are they too late to things, just say to them, this is like a multi-decade revolution. This is going to change absolutely everything. I'm sure that from all the refuels you've watched at this point, you're definitely ETH pilled on DeFi and DAOs and NFTs and all that sort of stuff. And I think as time goes on, we're going to see more and more people kind of come into that and embrace that. So Quenta announced on Twitter today their L2 launch plan. So Quenta, for those who don't know, is an interface for interacting with synthetics to basically trade derivatives. So they announced the 3 phases of their L2 launch plan, and for those who aren't aware, they are launching on Optimism. So they're going to be doing this very soon. I think that they're going to do this within the next few weeks. I don't know if there was any dates said here. I just saw this before, so I haven't actually read it yet. But they're saying here that at launch, users will be able to trade synthetic ETH, synthetic BTC, and synthetic Link, and then that's in phase 1 of the L2 beta here, which I don't think there's a date here. Maybe I'm missing it. I'm just trying to read through it quickly here. Phase 2 will be trading incentives. So as I mentioned, they are going to have their own token, but they've also part of the synthetic ecosystem, so they're going to have SNX rewards as well. And phase 3, there's going to be futures and L2 trading competition here. So I think this is coming really soon. I think in response to Arbitrum coming, I think Optimism is speeding up and kind of like got a little bit of a fire under their ass because of the fact that I wouldn't call Arbitrum and Optimism necessarily competitors, but they are kind of filling the same niche here. Generalized EVM, optimistic rollup technology. They definitely kind of cut from the same cloth. So I think that Arbitrum's tomorrow now. I've been speaking about Arbitrum all this week, and I'm actually going to talk about them again in a sec. But that is kind of pushing Optimism to release what they have here with Synthetics and Uniswap. I spoke about how Uniswap's actually going to Arbitrum as well, so that's going to be pushing the Optimism team too here. But at the same time, these things are going to take time to roll out. I've said before that I thought 2021 was going to be the adoption kind of year for layer 2s. I still think it will be for like early adoption, but scaling Ethereum is like a multi-year thing. It's not just going to happen in a few months. Like we'll have these solutions that go live and people will be able to experience these really cool, fast and cheap transactions, but there's much more to scaling Ethereum than just that. And I do believe that at some point there's going to just be so much demand that these L2s are even going to start having to kind of like scale out and scale, in different ways and kind of improve their system, which they definitely will do. So, none of this is a silver bullet, but it's really good to see that these early apps are going live on L2 here. And speaking of Arbitrum, actually, they announced that they're going to be integrating with Etherscan. So, I was talking about the other day how Optimism announced that an Etherscan block explorer and it's live. Arbitrum will be having the same kind of deal here. And I've talked about how I believe Etherscan is kind of becoming a go-to block explorer now for not just layer 1s, but different layer 2s and kind of like other chains out there as well. Polygon, as I said before, has been teasing this, and I just believe that every L2 is going to have an Etherscan implementation here. And I think, did they announce a date here of when this is to be expected? I think it might, here. They expect it should be ready by the end of July. So I actually expect that Arbitrum will go live to end users in June sometime. Maybe they push it out to July, and they have their own block explorer that they're trying to improve to make sure that it's good enough for those kind of early users. But nothing's going to beat an Etherscan block explorer for Arbitrum. So I'm really, really cool to see that this was announced today. I'm so excited. Tomorrow is the DevNet. Or today, sorry, tomorrow, today, 28th of May is their DevNet launch. I'm not sure what time it's launching, but it's going to be really cool to see that launch and see how many projects are going to deploy there, because there's a lot, I think. I think there's actually going to be much more than people think there are, and we've seen how fast you can bootstrap an ecosystem in this kind of in this industry, given the right incentives, because liquidity moves really quickly. If you put your app on Arbitrum and then do some liquidity mining incentives, you're going to have capital flowing over straight away. So we could see Arbitrum become a leading L2, a leading scalability solution very, very quickly here, which I'm very excited for, of course. But yeah, so I'm going to keep an eye on that. Hopefully, Arbitrum's kind of DevNet launch on mainnet goes smooth today, and we can see all the apps that are finally coming to Arbitrum here. So Pete Kim from Coinbase is teasing something. He's basically tweeted out a Goerli testnet transaction here. It may look like nothing to you. There's no data here. There's no Ether being sent. There's no tokens being sent. But if you click here and say click to see more, and then you view this input here as UTF, you can see a message embedded in this transaction saying, bringing millions of new people to the wonderful world of DeFi and Web3. Now, the kind of where the transaction went to in this wallet is basically Goerli USDC here. So he's basically, I think what he's teasing is that something got to do with USDC, but he's been leaving breadcrumbs around kind of like Arbitrum lately. I remember I went over the other day how he talked about testing Arbitrum for USDC. I think this may mean that Coinbase is going to have a withdrawal and deposit functionality for Arbitrum. Maybe I'm getting ahead of myself. USDC being on Arbitrum is all well and good, but if you can deposit and withdraw from Arbitrum using USDC as a start, that's going to be absolutely massive for adoption, because Coinbase has, as I was discussed before, they have Optimism support, but that is only for their mobile wallet app. So if they can have Arbitrum support for their mobile wallet app and the kind of like normal exchange app, that would be really, really big, and that would onboard, as he puts in the embedded message here, that would onboard millions of new people to DeFi and Web3 here, which I think it will, because Coinbase has millions of monthly active users that a lot of them wouldn't have ever touched Ethereum or DeFi before, and doing this and kind of like promoting it to them and getting them on here would be really, really cool. So I am really looking forward to this. It's going to be really awesome to see how this plays out. So Alex Vandersand tweeted a really interesting picture today where he says, this is what the first open source Congress of Gitcoin looks like. And you can see here, this is basically a pie chart breakdown of kind of like the stewards in Gitcoin's governance process here. And I've spoken about this before, but there's a bunch of really well-known and long-term community members that have basically majority of the voting power here. You can see Trent Van Epps, who I've spoken about before. That's who I've delegated my Gitcoin tokens to. Austin, who he works at the Ethereum Foundation. Austin Griffith, who also worked at the Ethereum Foundation and has been basically building developer tools and helping onboard people to be a developer for a very long time in the Ethereum ecosystem. Linda from Scalar Capital here, long-time investor, has been doing a bunch of good educational materials around Ethereum for a long time. Lefteris here, obviously also been in the Ethereum ecosystem for a long time, builds a accounting tool where you can basically, called Rotkey, that you can download and track all of your different accounting things. Jordan Lyell from the Don't Buy Meme project, or the Meme project, the NFT project you might have seen. Peter Pan from Metacartel, long-time Ethereum community member, is really good at building communities. Simona Pop here, I think she's started out at Status, I think she started out at Bounties Network, which basically got absorbed into Gitcoin, I believe. I'm not sure what she's up to these days, but yeah, she's been around for a while as well. Andre Cronje here, I don't think he needs any introduction, right? Founder of Yearn and many other things. And then three more people here. Crypto Wanderer, I'm not sure who he is, so sorry about that. Kenneth NG, Kenneth is, I'm pretty sure, at the Ethereum Foundation, doing a bunch of stuff there. And Yaylor works with Gitcoin, I believe, as well here. So yeah, there's a bunch of other delegates, but they're not named on this chart here. I think there was missing, the Grift. So Griff Green here has been a long-time Ethereum community member as well here, who basically works on a bunch of different things, as you can see from his profile. But yeah, this is what the future of governance of these platforms is going to look like, I believe. These well-known, long-time Ethereum community members who get tokens delegated to them from the kind of community, because they understand and they realize that these people are the best people to kind of like do these sorts of things. And I've spoken about what Gitcoin governance is going to kind of consist of in the stewards. With the stewards, they're going to be managing the whole platform, whether that's from disputes during Gitcoin grants rounds, or paying out for different grants, or doing Sybil resistant things, or just managing the Gitcoin platform generally. So really cool to see all of these long-term members kind of stepping up to the plate here. As I said before, I'm trying to find some time to become a steward myself, because this is definitely something that I'm really interested in. And obviously I have been very involved with Gitcoin through the Daily Gwei and ETH Hub. So I'm looking forward to finding some time to get involved there. So Hot Protocol teased something really, really cool on Twitter today. So for those of you who don't know, Hot Protocol is basically a multi-chain, multi-L2 swap protocol. So I guess like transport protocol. So you can go from essentially like one layer 2 to the other using Hot Protocol instead of having to go to layer 1. And what they teased today was a Polygon to Ethereum withdrawal in 1 minute and 30 seconds instead of 3 hours, which is huge, a huge improvement. Like for any of you who have used Polygon and want to withdraw to Ethereum, you would know the pain of having to wait 3 hours or more to get your tokens back. Now, using Hot Protocol, you can do this in 90 seconds, which is obviously an absolutely massive improvement. And I don't think anyone minds waiting 90 seconds to move some funds from one chain to the other. That's much, much faster than even going through an exchange. For example, you can't go from Polygon to any exchanges right now, but if you were to do that, you would have to actually go to the exchange. You would have to wait for the deposits to clear through. You would leave a paper trail there too to this exchange, and then depending on the size, you wouldn't even be able to withdraw it back if you haven't KYC'd or anything like that. So when you kind of look at that sort of stuff, This is just like much better than that. So I think waiting 90 seconds is fine. But there's no information of how this kind of works under the hood here. Maybe they have something on their GitHub, but I'm assuming there's some kind of like trade-offs here, whether that be custodial or, some kind of trust assumptions here. I'd have to dig into it deeper, but really cool to see this cross-chain, cross-L2 stuff going on, because this is exactly what we need. This is what I've been talking about, where I said that people keep kind of coming up and saying, oh, layer 2's fragment liquidity. And it's like, well, I mean, yes, but we're going to solve that. We're going to actually do more to kind of like build more tools around this to make it better for the end user. So yeah, I'll leave it at that. But I thought that was really cool to see Hot Protocol teasing this today. So for those of you who are holding DPI or the DeFi Pulse Index, you can now use this as kind of collateral on Kashi from SushiSwap here. So you can lend your DPI and then kind of borrow ETH, BTC, USDC, DAI, and USDT here, which I think is really cool, because I think DPI is one of the best collateral assets that you can have, because of the fact that it's an index, but it's not on a lot of these other platforms like Aave and Compound and things like that, because of the fact that and Maker, because I think it's just riskier, because the underlying assets can change in it. But all in all, I'm very grateful that Kashi has this onboarded here, because I think for your assets to be successful, they need to be productive. Everyone wants to hold productive assets at the end of the day. That's a major reason why I hold the assets that I do. Pretty much all of them are productive assets. And if they're not, I don't really feel too comfortable holding them. So yeah, just really cool to see DPI on Kashi here. So Seb from Zappify has tweeted out a teaser picture today, which could mean a number of things, but I think I know what he's teasing. But anyway, he said, just took a random screenshot from a random interface, and it's basically a picture of DeFiSnap.eth Ethereum address having a level attached to it with underneath quests and rewards. So people might think, the first thing you might think of is, okay, is this a token, right? Is Zappify doing a token, and then you can kind of like level up and maybe earn rewards in tokens for doing so, and you can go on quests and do all these sorts of things. I don't know for sure, and I should kind of like make a disclaimer here that I'm a seed investor in Zappa here, but I don't know what's going on here. I wasn't kind of told any information about this. I was just sent a tweet from one of the people who work at Zappa and be like, hey, look at this. And they didn't give me any context. They just said, this might be something you're interested in. So I'm like, yeah, this looks fun. And I didn't ask for a context or anything. But if I had to guess, this definitely has something to do with a token. I mean, I can't really think of anything else, because rewards to me, I mean, you could get rewards in other tokens, of course, but if you want to do it in a really big way, rewarding the community with your own kind of like token makes a lot of sense to me. So we'll have to see how this pans out here. Obviously, as I said, I'm a seed investor in Zappa, so I kind of like have a bit of a bias here, but generally, I just think it's cool when teams do these sorts of teasers, because it gets your brain going, gets people talking about it. Pretty good marketing, I think, but we'll have to see how this shakes out here. I think it's token season, right? Airdrop season. We had a few of those over the last few days, but we'll see how it goes from here. All right, last up here, we have Balancer Labs announcing another strategic round from a bunch of key investors, including Blockchain Capital, Kane from Synthetics, Continue Fund, and Continue Capital here, and a bunch of other investors. So Balancer raised $24.25 million by selling BAL out of their treasury, which I think is... Well, I think it's actually becoming like a theme now, where a lot of these teams will have a token already, but they'll have them in the treasury and they'll just sell it to existing investors by doing this. Now, some people will kind of like hit back on this and say that this is just giving insiders, access to tokens at a kind of discounted price here. And I get that. But I think at the same time, the way you kind of align people in this ecosystem is by giving them a vested interest in your protocol. So when you think about it, a strategic investor, the term strategic investor or key investor may mean nothing to you. And maybe I'll explain what this is, because I've become on board with a lot of teams as a strategic angel investor. Now, what this means is that I can add something valuable to the kind of like, I guess, project that a lot of people can't. And for me, it's my reach, right? It's marketing, it's community management, it's giving feedback on marketing and advising on different things on how to do things, and my network within this ecosystem. That's kind of what I bring to the table. Whereas these kind of like funds and things like that have deep connections inside and outside of crypto for a variety of things, but they can also provide support across a number of different areas, like hiring, development support, marketing support, like community, all this sort of stuff. So that's what a kind of like strategic investor or key investor means here. And as I said, the best way to get them on board and align with your project is to get them directly invested in it. Right? There's a no-brainer there. So that's kind of like what I would, I guess, like hit back on when people kind of say, well, this is just selling tokens to insiders. But I kind of get it at the same time, because sometimes people might feel like, oh, well, I should have got, I should be able to be given this opportunity. And I believe you should, but not everyone should be given it. I believe that if you're a contributor of a protocol and you're actually helping with the governance and everything like that, you, one, should be paid in the native token, and two, you should be given the option to buy discounted tokens that are vested over time to get even more kind of exposure to the project that you're helping out here. So I think I saw the Index Co-op that they wanted to do this. I don't know what the status of it right now, but it was on the forum where they wanted to do this and kind of give long-term community members access to the treasury as well. I think that's just the best way to go about it, because I don't believe in just selling tokens to anyone, because there's a speculators too who will just like buy the token and then just dump it, and then they just provide no value to the project. So what's the point of that? To raise some money? Well, I mean, money is very easy to come across these days, so why not raise money from your community that actually cares about the project, is invested in it both with their time and their social capital, but also their money here. So yeah. Anyway, congrats to Balancer Labs for raising this. This is a nice sum of money here. This is going to give them runway for quite a while, and I'm sure they've been scaling up their operations for quite a while now. They just released V2 with a new interface and things like that, which is really exciting for Balancer as well. But that is it for today. So thank you everyone for listening and watching. Be sure to subscribe to the newsletter if you haven't yet. Join the Discord channel, subscribe to the YouTube channel, give the video a thumbs up, and I'll catch you all next week. Thanks everyone.